Productivity Gladiator.
I'm Brian Nelson Palmer. On this show, I share personal, practical productivity skills that will make you more productive and advance your career. And in this episode, we're talking about succession planning for productivity. How do you stop losing that knowledge when people leave? And with me on the show today is Meridith Elliott Powell, who is a business growth strategist, a sales futurist, and a Hall of Fame speaker. Meridith, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you. I got a lot going on, don't I?
I was going to say, that's a lot of titles. And for those people who might not be familiar with you, we're going to talk about succession planning. For the person listening, how are you relevant to this discussion we're about to have?
Yeah. So I have been really focused more on uncertainty and how it impacts business today. And I've been studying and researching that since 2016. And it's relevant in the fact that it impacts companies holistically. It impacts sales, it impacts leadership and talent, and it impacts strategy overall. So right now we are facing one of the biggest succession gaps we have ever faced in our history. In the next 3.5 years, every single baby boomer will turn 65. That means in the next 3.5 years, a little less than, they will be eligible to walk out the door and take with them all the wisdom, experience, knowledge, and confidence they have. Add to that, we are replacing entry-level jobs with AI, and the highest unemployment rate is in young professionals. So everybody's focused on technology right now. I think you need to be focused on talent.
True story. If you're listening, you probably have somebody in your workspace that is, you know, that they're going to retire or that time is coming up. So I think it's very relevant, especially if you haven't already been through this, it's coming, where somebody leaves and then you realize, oh gosh, there was a lot that person took with them when they walked out the door. So I definitely relevant, Meridith. I love this. And I will say that there are people who talk about, you know, succession planning. And what would you say makes you different from other people or organizations that the person listening might have heard of or be familiar with?
Yeah, there's a couple of places I really think I'm different than most people. Most people talk about succession planning at the C-suite and executive level. And I think, in my opinion, it's the least critical place to be talking about it. Talk about controversial, is that I think succession planning is an organizational strategy. You need to be thinking about succession planning the way the military does. And they're worried about losing any critical person at any time. And so they make succession planning part of their culture, meaning that if I was an officer and you came in behind me, I would immediately have to start training you to take my job because I can't be promoted without that. And so, you know, the other place I really think that I'm different is I feel like people treat succession planning as a strategy that's separate from profit and bottom line results. And I think it is very integral to profit and bottom line results. I think talent interruption is one of the biggest costs we have in organizations today. And it's one of the biggest costs we ignore. Nobody ever calculates turnover. Do you know the average life of a CEO these days is less than 3 years? Do you know how much it costs to recruit a CEO, to hire a CEO, to bonus a CEO, to move a CEO, and then he or she walks out the door in 3 years? So to me, it is like, again, I think everybody's focused on technology. And I'm like, you all have your head in the sand. You need to be focused on talent.
Totally agree. Well, I can't wait to get into this discussion with you. There's an amazing overlap, I think, between succession planning in the future and just where do you keep your processes and how do you keep them and make them efficient? And oh my gosh, there's so much that we can talk about on that front. So let's dive in on that one. I kind of want to zoom out first. So when we're talking about succession planning now, you already said it's not C-suite. We're talking about the troops, but kind of dive into that a little more. What are we really talking about?
Yeah, if I had to put it in really simple forms, I think what we're talking about is eliminating talent interruption. And what I mean by that is, let's assume you have somebody who handles insurance claims in your company, and they are phenomenal at handling insurance claims. You know that if anything happened to them, that next phenomenal person can step right into their shoes and you see no interruption in the amount you're getting in collections. If you have an unbelievable salesperson, you know that you have 2 or 3 people around them that if they picked up and went to another company, your sales wouldn't take a dip because you've planned for that. So I call it eliminating talent interruption.
What I'm trying to say is I find most organizations tend to focus on recruiting great people. And I think that there's, to me, as I've gotten into Lean Six Sigma, Black Belt, process improvement, all of the ways to do things better, I think if you're just looking for good people, then as soon as that person leaves, it's like a constant battle. Whereas I think if you really want to kind of catapult to the next level as an organization, it sounds like the same thing you're saying, but that's where if you have really good processes in place where you can take Susie out and put Joe in and keep going, or do a rotation program, or somebody takes a 2-week vacation and nothing changes. We don't have to wait while they're gone. Like that kind of thinking is great. Processes and structure around that is also what's going to kind of help with succession planning. I don't know. Is that similar to, or is that a different lens for what you're talking?
No, I think it's similar to, but I am going to put a different spin on it. When I go in, I work with organizations. When we define talent, we define and reward talent very differently. And what I mean by that is I may be let's assume you and I are the top sales performers in the company. And as the top sales performers, we would be graded and bonused equally. But when I go in and work with a company, I would alter. If I was a great salesperson, but you were a great salesperson who also developed great salespeople, I would bonus and reward you higher than I would bonus and reward me. I would create the incentive plan in the company that performance and development of people are equal, and you can only have the two to advance in the company. Does that make sense? So like the only way you can create a culture of succession is not to attract talent. Everybody's trying to attract talent, and attracting really great people is like getting diamonds in the rough. What you want to do is get really great people. You know, it's kind of like if you recruited Michael Jordan, or you recruited, I'm going to forget, oh God, this is like sacrilegious in the state of North Carolina where I'm from. Dean Smith. There I go. Or you could recruit Dean Smith. You want Dean Smith because Dean Smith can produce Michael Jordans, right? Now, not everybody's going to be Michael Jordan, but he can build a team around that creates the Michael Jordan. Everybody's trying to find Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Find the coaches, find the people who can build that talent, that culture.
I make it a non-negotiable that nobody gets into a leadership position without a track record of developing other people. Because a talented person is valuable to an organization. A talented person who can develop other talented people is invaluable to a company.
Absolutely. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Well, then let's zoom in. So let's get practical. So what are the biggest productivity mistakes you're seeing when it comes to succession planning? Dive into that.
Well, I think the number one, I was thinking about this when you were introducing it. It is probably the problem I hear talked about the most and the problem that the least amount is done on. Do you know that 86% of companies say their huge fear is that they do not have the talent to produce what they need to produce in the next 86%, yet less than 14% have succession plans in place. So number one is it is a problem that is talked about all the time and a problem that very little action is ever taken around.
Gosh, what a gap. 86% and 14%.
Yeah. And I think it's because we overcomplicate it. Like we think it either has to be all or nothing. Like you have to create a full-blown succession plan, which is another place I feel like I'm really different than other people. Other people come in and like credit unions right now are under a federal mandate that they have to have succession plans in place. And so you see these consultants going around creating these huge succession plans that, in my opinion, are never going to get executed and are never going to get implemented. So the productivity mistake is that they make it too big and too complicated and they overwhelm people. When I go in and do a succession plan with a company, I'll just say, give me your top 3 critical people. It may be the CEO, it may not be the CEO. If the CEO's done a really good job, he or she is not the most critical person. I wouldn't even start with them. Some CEOs might take that as an insult, but when you have reached the level that the team can function without you, you are a damn good CEO, right? You told me I could slightly swear on this podcast. But,
Yeah.
give me the 3 critical, positions. If you've got a head of IT that is just so good and she doesn't have a backup, let's start with her. Let's start with your chief commercial officer that's bringing revenue in, whatever it is. But give me those 3 positions and let's just start with there. So another productivity hack is I think that people just get overwhelmed with it.
Yeah. So is it one page? When you talk about making it simpler, what is the succession plan? What does it look like?
It starts out really small, just really, we go in and we do it twofold. We run it side by side. Number one, we start with the 3 critical positions for a couple of reasons, Brian. Number one is I want people to have a win. I want them to feel the momentum of it, because if they have a small win, they'll take the second piece of it. They'll see that it isn't hard. So while we're doing it on that part, the other is we work with human resources or whoever's working in human resources to make succession planning part of the criteria for advancement, what I mentioned before. So we bake it into the culture going forward, that starting at this date, since I started consulting with you, starting now, nobody will get promoted that doesn't have a proven track record of developing other people. And so we let the team know we're going to be a succession culture organization. We're going to be an organization that's dedicated to promoting within. And in order to do that, we need everybody to get on board. And the way that everybody gets on board is we want you to get promoted. But in order to get promoted, you have to help the other people around you, and you have to train the people that are going to move into your position.
Yeah. What does that look like when you say they have a proven track record of developing what are the metrics like for that?
Yeah. So they can come in and they can show you, literally walk you through, number one, how and why they have 1 or 2 people ready to move into their position and why those people are ready to move in to their position. And number 2, they have a track record of 1 or 2 people on the team they've helped get better at their position. So for example, Brian, that might be a brand new hire who just got into their position, and they took that brand new hire under their wing and they mentored and they developed him. They took somebody who just got promoted into a role that maybe even worked into another department, but they helped them, learn how to work with their department and get comfortable with the things that they needed in order to be successful. So it's that they can show you literally what they've done to get people ready to take their position, as well as help other people on the team be successful.
Yeah. What would you say to the person then who I've heard discussions where some people think, well, if I make myself invaluable because they can't function without me, then that's job security for me. And that seems to run right in the face of the discussion we're having right now. But at the same time, the current environment is a little worried about job security for a lot of the people that are out there. So what are your thoughts on that sort of competing? Like on the one hand, you develop people so that you are not the only person. And then the other attitude is, well, if they can't survive without me, it's job security.
Yeah, I get that question all the time. And I'm going to answer it 2 ways. I'm going to answer it in a way that I've already answered it. Is if I'm sitting in an executive board meeting and I'm deciding who's the most valuable to the company, Meridith or Brian. Meridith is phenomenal at her job. Brian is phenomenal at his job, but Brian just produced 3 other Brians as good as, if not better than he. Who was more valuable to the Carolina basketball team, Michael Jordan or Dean Smith? Some people might say Michael Jordan. It was Dean Smith, because Michael Jordan would tell you he wouldn't have been Michael Jordan without a coach like Dean Smith. So that's number one. The other is, the pace of change has increased 183% in the last 4 years. We're moving 183% faster than we did just 4 years ago. If you don't think that there's going to be opportunity for you in a company, if you continue to grow and expand your skills, then you're not thinking very big. The only way that you can become irrelevant is to become protective, is to just ball in and get so fearful. I am telling you, if you can show that you can develop people and you're good at it, people will hire you all day long. It is their biggest pain point right now. Nobody focuses on developing other people. And if you can produce at your own job and then help other people produce, you're worth so much money to that company.
Yeah. There's something you said earlier I want to go back to, which is you talked about identifying the critical people. You said, give me the organization, give me the 3 most valuable people to you or most critical people to you right now. Describe a little more what you mean by critical. You mentioned like an IT person or somebody that's not replaceable. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I always say to the executives that I work with, if I sent you home right now, tell me who would be leaving your organization that you would go home, you would get a bottle of liquor, and you would cry all night long if they told you they were walking out the door. That's your critical person. But let me get a little more, let me get a little more granular because you know who they are.
It's true.
It is.
I mean, I get it. That gives you an initial list, right? Like, yes, we know who those people are, but there's emotions tied up in that. Like if I'm getting liquor, it's because I love that person. There's that, but there's some people who might be critical who I don't necessarily love that person, but they're critical and we should. So like, what else besides that?
Yeah. So let me tell you, there's no CEO crying because they love somebody. That's not why they're crying. Because a CEO is on the line every day for bottom line results. So number 2, think about every CEO I work with rides horses. They ride their horses. And what I mean by that is when you have a problem, who do you go to? Who do you call? It isn't necessarily the person who runs that division. It is the person that you count on. It is the person you rely on, the person you know will give you honest feedback, the person you know will get it done. When you look at the numbers you've got to hit for that quarter, who directly contributes to it? I don't want to say like a commercial sales manager is the most critical person in the company. If it's one salesperson who's really pulling the numbers in, I could care less if that commercial sales manager leaves. I'm going to cry if that top performing salesperson leaves, right? If you've got a really, really good IT person who is on top of everything, really handling your cyber, as well as really keeping you up to date on the AI and the things that you need, then like think about your organization and really think about, gosh, I mean, who's really running it? Brian, it's back to that 80-20 rule. Life runs on the 80-20 rule. And 20% of the people in your company, you cannot live without. You better have a succession plan in place for them.
Got it. Okay. That's a little clearer. I'm seeing that. So then what next? Now I've looked around. I know who some of the critical people are. What does the succession plan look like? Is a 1-page document? Is it a bunch of tasks? Is it what does it look like when you come into an organization and you're like, describe for me an organization that's like, wow, they have good succession plan. What does that look like? And then what does it look like when it's not?
Yeah. So I think the best example of a great succession plan that I have seen in a long time is Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase. And so what does a good succession plan look like? Number 1, it was developed long before the CEO ever thought about walking out the door. It was done immediately, pretty much. I don't know when exactly, but let's just assume pretty much when Jamie Dimon took the job, right? It also was really thought of, could it be one person or does it need to be more than one person who needs to understand how to do this job? It is a plan that has been practiced so that it doesn't have to go into action only if something happens to the CEO. It is a plan that everybody knows and understands. If the CEO is not there, or the critical person. This is what happens, and this is everybody's role. Now, why do I say that's the best succession plan I've ever seen? Is because Jamie Dimon is not only the CEO, he is the face of JP Morgan Chase. He is literally a celebrity. Hardest succession plan to have is a celebrity. When Jamie Dimon had a heart attack, an out of the blue heart attack, rushed to the hospital, JP Morgan Chase did not miss a beat. And they did not miss a beat because two executives knew exactly what to do, exactly what their role was. Every executive around them understood, and every executive underneath that understood how to handle it with employees, how to handle it with customers, and how to handle it with the press. So what was happening was, people didn't even know if Jamie Dimon was going to survive. But what they did know was JP Morgan Chase was going to survive. That organization was sustainable. Now I'll give you an example of an organization that did not do it very well. And that was an organization, it was a group of young men that called me. They were all in their 50s, 4 CEOs that ran a company. And they called me, literally 2 of them called me because they thought they were going to lose their company. And they called because they had bought this company 10 years ago. They had decided to run it as 4 CEOs. Other consultants had told them they should think about a succession plan. They said they did not need a succession plan because there were 4 of them. They didn't need a succession plan because they were in good health. They didn't need a succession plan because they were all in their early 50s at that time. I got the phone call because in a matter of 48 hours, the healthiest of the 4 dropped dead of a heart attack. The other of the second of the 4 got caught embezzling within the 24-hour time frame of the other dying. And to the public, the 2 facing were the 2 that were gone from the company. They lost 33% of their employee base and over 28% of their customer base because they didn't know what to do, because it was 6 months of panic. And employees got scared they wouldn't have a job. Employees and customers just thought, what about me and my, I feel for them. I love those guys, but I got to take care of my assets. So those are 2 examples. And so what you have to make sure of, and what you have, as a leader, you have to say, Brian, you could be the janitor and you have 3 other people working for you. And people think, well, who cares? Well, it matters because people can't walk into that building it being dirty, but I have to empower you and I have to instill in you that if anything happened to Brian, those floors are going to be cleaned. Those 3 guys under you are going to know what to do, and there's going to be no confusion at all. I know who to call if I need somebody to come and clean my office. And that's why JP Morgan Chase just ran beautifully, because everybody just knew what to do. And nobody even knew if Jamie Dimon would ever be coming back, including Jamie Dimon.
Yeah. So was that written down somewhere? Was it drilled multiple times? From the experience now, if you're working on this team that has a good succession plan, what's that like?
Yeah. So number one, it is written down. It's written like a crisis communication plan. You've got to write down, you have to label it. I'll tell you another productivity mistake I see companies make is they're like, well, Brian's going to be my successor, but I don't want to state Brian to be my successor because I don't want to hurt Gina's feelings. You know what I mean? People, they won't state it because they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. Well, this isn't about saving people's feelings. If I think Brian is the best person to run this company, I need to state that Brian is the best person to run this company, and I just need to do it, right? And so it is written down, and then it is practiced. And what I mean by practiced is I can't hope you can do my job if I'm not there. I need to let you in to do my job. So when I'm on vacation in Europe for 2 weeks, I'm sending you to the board meetings. I'm letting you make decisions. I'm okay with you making a mistake, because the confusion we have with succession planning is that we think we're teaching people to do a job, and we're not teaching people to do a job. What we're teaching people to do is to be able to think when they're in that role. They need to be able to think like a leader. And the only way to think like a leader is not for you to tell me what to do. It's for me to try it out, to fail a little, to fix it, to do it again or to even do it my way, which may be different than you.
I have a real hard time with organizations that, and you probably worked in one if you're listening. You've been in a place where they tend to run their operation through email and PDFs. They probably have a PDF somewhere and it might be in a shared drive or it might not, but you can't find that information. So the best organizations, if you really want a simple system, all of the knowledge and the processes have to be in a central place that everybody can access. It's not a private shared drive. It's not we're not keeping things confidential or siloed. Like if I need Meredith to step in and do my job because I had a heart attack like Jamie Dimon did, then she's got to be able to get to all of the information. And if she spends days just trying to get access or find where everything is, that's not going to work. So I have a hard time with organizations like that. Is that part of the conversation when you're talking with teams? Are you looking at it going, we have got to get you out of these PDFs and you need to get an intranet so that everybody can find the stuff? Or what else goes with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people need to have access to the information. But I tell you, one of the big things that I require is that people fundamentally understand, if you are in a leadership position, you need to fundamentally understand how the business works. And what I mean by that is that you need to understand how the business makes money. You need to understand how the business loses money. You need to understand, what the cash flow cycle of the company is. You need to fundamentally understand the business. You want to empower leaders, really get with them at that level, and you're going to see unbelievable change.
Yeah. Gosh, on that topic, I think it would be so valuable for leaders to spend some time doing the budget process and doing the procurement process and the contract process and understanding. So how does the money come in? How do we make agreements with other suppliers? Because you don't do it all yourself. Like, how does the actual business part of it work? Because then later on, especially if you need to make decisions or advise people on things, how does the money come in? How is it spent? What's the budget like? How does that process work in my organization? And so if you're listening and you don't have a pretty good understanding of that, that's an opportunity for you to make some friends in some other departments and educate yourself just in making yourself more able to step in those situations.
Yeah. Years ago, I worked for a gentleman that at that time was the best boss I ever had and the most frustrating human being I ever worked for. And he was those two things because anytime you ever went to his office, his first response to anything you asked him was, I don't know. What do you think we ought to do? And it got to the point where you just never went into Jeff's office without some solution in your head, whether it was right or whether it was wrong. And what I realized was when Jeff got promoted, when he went to corporate headquarters out of our division, what I realized was that we didn't need him. And I realized that because he did not teach us to do a job. He taught us to think. So when he wasn't there, we could think our way through things because of the discussions that he had had with us. Brian, it reminds me of when we were all kids, and this is probably really going to date me, given AI and everything now. But when we were kids, you would go ask your mother or your father what something meant, and they would tell you to go look it up in the encyclopedia. Right. And they didn't do that because they didn't know the answer. They didn't do that because they didn't like you. They did that because they didn't want you living in their basement the rest of their lives. And they wanted you to grow up to be productive adults. They saw their role as developing you. That's what leaders need to do today. They need to develop the people. I think it's the highest and best use of a leader today is to develop the people around you.
Yeah. So on that topic, then let's talk about so let's say you're in a leadership role, whether it's a team lead or a project lead or a something, and you want to start getting your team ready for something like this. What Meredith, what's your advice to that person? I'm like, all right, do you start by writing it down? Do you just think about, well, if I was going to take a 2-week trip to Europe, who's going to need to do what? And let's go ahead and loop them into those meetings. Do we write the documents first and then have the meetings? Do we talk to the people and then write the documents and then do that? Like, what's it? where do you start if you don't want to wait for your organization to decide succession planning is important and you want to do it for yourself, for your team?
Yeah. So, there's number one is I'm going to back you up further than that. And when I back you up further than that, what I mean by that is I want you to first and foremost, I want you to develop your leader avatar. And what I mean by that is when you think of the best leaders, just like you build an ideal customer profile, you know who your best customer is. You need to know who your best leader is, because a leader that's the right fit for your organization won't necessarily be the right fit for my organization. So you need to begin by building your avatar. What qualities, what characteristics do they have? So that you're starting out with kind of at least 50% of the way there, right? You're starting with the right skill sets and right values and right characteristics. Because if you're just going to, I think that's another place where people make a mistake. They look at hiring leaders and they look at resumes, and resumes don't tell you how somebody would act in a situation. They don't tell you, the things that really make the difference with a leader. So you need to start with your avatar. And then once you know your avatar, you're looking out at your organization and first of all, coaching people according to that avatar. You need to put the value in the organization on that avatar. Here's what we're looking for. I call it a criteria for advancement. Here's what we're looking for in our future leaders. And let's talk about what skills you have, what skills you don't have, and what skills you need to learn, and you need to develop in order to become that avatar.
Okay, so you got a leader avatar, and that's where you start. And I'm really thinking about the person, because oftentimes we as intelligent workers know that succession planning is important. If for nothing else, then we want to take 2-week vacations and not have to check our work email while we're gone. So like that's it. It starts with that kind of simple look, but like where do we start besides the ideal avatar? Then what? Where do you go from there?
Well, first of all, let's assume that I had my ideal avatar. I'd sit down and I would have a gap conversation with you against that avatar. I mean, I would say, I want you to grade yourself against how you think you come up against this avatar, and I'm going to grade you against this avatar. And then let's work on a development plan for you to become more of this avatar. So basically, I've got you on a development plan to become my successor. But I've had an honest, bold conversation with you about where you're phenomenal as a leader and where you need to develop. And we're working on closing that gap.
Okay. So we got an ideal avatar. We have those gap conversations. Then what?
And then we got to see if you're moving along that continuum. Just because I tell you what you need to develop, I think another place where people make a mistake is they lead people's potential rather than leading the individual. Just because you tell me I have potential to be a leader doesn't mean I'm going to do the things I need to do to become that leader. So you need to get out of my way and see if I rise to the occasion, right? Jack Welch, a legendary leader of G, one reason he always had 3 or 4 successors in mind is he wanted to have a choice. He wanted to pick the best of the best, right?
Sure.
And so you want to have more than a few coming through there. But as you're doing those things, you're slowly getting out of the way. I mean, I mentioned my boss Jeff, and so what he would do would be he would go on vacation and he would send me to the board meeting. When the chairman of the board was coming in town, he'd have me present in front of the chairman of the board, kind of getting me used to being the leader while he was still there to catch the net.
Sure. At what point in all this do you actually write a succession plan of some
I think
kind?
you should always write a succession plan. I think it needs
in the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it needs to be stated somewhere. Now, but a succession plan is not a guarantee. Just because I say I believe that Brian is going to be my successor doesn't mean that Brian's going to be my successor. At any time you could screw up along the way, or somebody more talented could come in, those things can change. But I think it's important to state it, write it down.
Yeah. In shifting gears a little bit, in what way has AI changed this conversation, if at all?
I think it's made it more important than I think it's made it more important than ever. And the reason I think it's made it more important than ever is that I think what AI is doing is making the human skills more important and more emphasis on those human skills and those critical thinking skills. So I think it's going to change what we look for in CEOs. I think it's going to change what we look for in our future leaders. It's going to have to be people that have the ability to communicate, have the ability to connect, have the ability to, rather than be in knowledge mode, be in learning mode. Executives today are probably more frustrated with their senior level leaders than they've ever been frustrated, because senior level leaders are in knowledge mode rather than in learning mode. And knowledge mode doesn't work in a world that is changing this fast. You can't do it the same way you did it last year. You have to be constantly moving forward and constantly changing. So I think that it makes this type of thing even more and more important, because we're going to have really high quality leaders to help people navigate this amount and this pace of change.
Yeah. What's the difference between succession planning versus just like cross training people? Because you were talking about the example where your boss used to put you in and take you to the board and let you present to the board and that kind of stuff. And on the one hand, that seems like just logical cross training where you have people who could pick up if somebody has to leave or if they get sick or something like that. But it seems like there's a nuance or a little bit of a difference. Can you expand on that?
I do think there's a difference. So I think about cross training as teaching me to do skills, like my boss teaching me to do the budget, right? That's cross training.
Yeah.
Succession planning is teaching me to holistically do his job. Like, if you're cross training me, then I can step in and do, if you go away on vacation and I need to, update your accounts while you're gone, I can handle that. But succession planning means you go away for 2 weeks and I can literally step into your job and handle anything that comes down, and you feel confident letting me do it. Whatever decisions I made stand, so I'm ready to move into the role.
Okay. So it's more about, it's not just doing the function. It's not just following the process. It's making decisions about the process that might go on beyond when I come back from vacation. Is
Yeah,
that,
I
or am
think
I
it's
missing the point?
no, I think it's the difference between physical and cerebral, right? Like, physical is training me to do the skills.
Yeah.
Cerebral is training me to think my way through and and do the job. Like, you might, if we're on a construction site, you might teach me to hammer, nails, or or do a little bit of drywall or something like that. But if I were the successor, I'd understand how to pull the project together and to get all the subs going and everything they need to do.
Yeah. I was at a conference and I was listening to a woman talk about her perspective on the workforce now in AI. And I think it was a woman from Microsoft. And she mentioned that you have the old school way to look at it was you have robots and you have people. And so you have people that manage the robots and you have people managers. And now there's a digital labor category that's almost like a third category, because managing AI agents, you do need somebody to do that. You can't, the robots just function on their own, but AI agents sometimes go haywire and hallucinate and that kind of stuff. I feel like there's this attitude in the business world right now where if we get agents to do this, we don't need people anymore. So that makes us more fireproof and not need a succession plan. And I think that's really short-sighted, and that works for 6 months until an agent breaks and you don't have anybody who knows how to. So I don't know. I'm conflicted on that. Share your thoughts on
This is what it reminds me of. My father-in-law worked for Daniel International, which now has become Floor Daniel. And he'd come up through high school as a draftsman, knew how to do it by hand. And everybody he worked with did it on CAD CAM. This was 35 years ago. And they were on a huge project in Argentina, massive project in Argentina. And because it was Argentina, the electrical grid went down and they had no ability to get anything done. Now they were trying to work and get it done in the States, but Wayne worked there and did it all by hand and got everything taken care of because he was the only one who knew how to do it. Now, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of going through the checkout at the grocery store and you still have the person there. And how many times do you run something through and you self checkout because you love doing it? You love not having to, wait in the other lines and everything, but you have a problem almost every time you're there, almost every time you're there. And you're so grateful that there's somebody standing right there to come over, put their little card on the machine and to fix it. Do I know if we're going to be like that in 25 years? I don't know. But I know right now, somebody to manage that is incredibly important. I also think you have to have somebody managing the process of really thinking through what are the tasks that AI should take over, not only because they make the most sense from a productivity standpoint, but they make the most sense from a customer standpoint. I mean, the amount of AI that I have to deal with on a phone or a computer is maddening to me. And somebody in just some office decided that they didn't need a human being anymore. And I find it incredibly frustrating because I scream into telephones that the three options they're giving me and that she's telling me she can help me with, she cannot help me with. And that's not the reason I'm calling. So I think that the companies that really figure that out are going to do a really good job with it.
Yeah. How does your succession planning discussions change now that AI is a part of the discussion?
Yeah, I think that it definitely changes what are the critical skills, and it also puts more emphasis on the development of people. I mean, the amount of retraining that's going to have to happen because of AI. I mean, I work a lot in the financial services industry, but you look at like tellers, they've been very task focused. You look at manufacturing, and a lot of those manufacturing jobs have been very task focused, and AI can come in and take over those tasks. Now, the financial institutions, the manufacturers aren't necessarily going to let go of people, but they're going to have to retrain those people to do something different, and they have to be retrained. So I think it puts more emphasis on what that avatar looks like and what we value from a succession.
So what is it? Does that mean in your succession planning, you said it puts more value on the people part of it.
I mean, it puts more value on.
Expand on that. Tell me more.
Well, I said that you're going to need to rethink the avatar. Like what
Yeah.
AI does is I can't have somebody in a succession position that moving into a leadership position who isn't learning oriented, somebody who isn't curious, somebody who doesn't have a track record of taking a risk, somebody who isn't a systems thinker or a strategic planner. It changes the skill set that people need in order to be in a leadership position.
Got it. Okay. So even more continuing to I mean, these days in the workforce, you are a lifelong learner. And if you thought that you were going to escape from being a lifelong learner and just do your same job, if you haven't noticed, AI is a new thing and you can't escape it, and you're going to have to learn it. So yes, you're going to have to learn new things, and being more well-versed and more cross-trained and more able to function in those different roles. I'm seeing what we're saying with the succession planning piece.
Yes, very much.
You need to be able to, if you're going to step up to another level, you need to understand what the people are doing, and you need to understand what the AI agents are doing in that workforce and be able to speak to those. And
Yes.
so get in with that. Yeah. So if the person listening could do we talked about a lot today, and there's a lot of opportunity. I like what we said with what you can do now, because I think there's a lot of value in just doing it for your own team. There's a lot of organizations where they don't have succession plans, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a succession plan for your team. If nothing else, then everybody gets to use their vacation time because you have a succession plan. Like there's so much good in that. So if you want to get started and you're not the C-level executive to make the decision for succession planning or whatever, what's the one thing the person listening could do today to start this process, Meredith?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that they can do, the most important thing that they could do, is to make succession planning a critical element for leadership growth in your organization. Meaning, start right now in your company that nobody moves into a position of leadership without a track record of developing people.
Got it. Okay. So making that change. And if you're not in a position to make that change, would your advice be different for the one thing they can do?
I'd start
Today?
developing people, because if your company doesn't value it, I take it to a company that does. I mean, I would wear it front and center like a badge. Like if my company didn't value it, if I went up for a leadership position and I showed them that I had my successor in place and that I developed the people around me and I still didn't get the position, I would move on. I would go into that next interview. And when they said, what's the number one reason we should give you this job? I would say the number one reason you should give me this job is, you think I would say, because I'm really good at what I do. But the more value I have to you is, I'm not only good at what I do, but I can develop other people just as good as I am. And that's the only thing holding you back from growth, is talent. That's it. If you had enough talent, you can do whatever you want to do. And I'm the person to help you get that talent.
Yeah. So starting out with the training of the people and the cross training you've in your own team, could you leave for a 2-week vacation today and your team could function without you? And if that's not the case, then start right now and put all pieces in place so that you can do that. Got it. Now talk about, you have some books on this topic. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So 2 books that I think would be really relevant. And one is understandable. It's called Who Comes Next. That's built for executives to really start and develop that succession plan. And then I have another book, if you're not lucky enough to work in an organization that's dedicated to a succession plan. It's called You Next: How to Put Yourself in the Driver's Seat and 100% in Charge of Your Own Career and Your Life.
Ooh, I feel like I want to read both of those for different reasons. I like it. I feel like you wrote one and you're like, I'm missing a whole group of people over here. So then you wrote the second one, didn't you?
Well, I feel like, here's my problem with employee engagement strategies. Is employee engagement is about a bunch of executives trying to figure out how to engage people. And you can't engage people. They have to engage themselves. And engagement works better when it's coming from both sides. So when I build engagement strategies for companies, I not only work with executives to help them build the right culture, but I work with employees to say, it's your life, your career, man, buck up and take charge of it, right? So that you have that energy coming from both directions. I mean, Brian, it'd be like if we went to marriage counseling and you were the only one trying to save our marriage, chances our marriage are going to be saved, right? We both have to be working on it. So for succession plans to work, for engagement plans to work, they have to be working from both sides.
Yeah. So you have a book for each side.
I do.
Got it. I love that. That's awesome. Well, Meridith, here's what I love. I love that we had a chance to talk about this specifically because right now I feel like and this is the story in my head, but I feel like there's a lot of focus on AI and AI taking jobs and AI agents, and it's a lot about AI. And I think we're losing track of the succession planning piece, which is organizations are going to continue on regardless of the AI platform, and your team is going to continue on regardless of what happens with the AI stuff. And so that story hasn't changed that much just because we introduced AI. It's still a human factor. It's still all of that. And so I love that you have these books and these resources. And I love that you talk about this stuff with organizations to help continue that, because Meridith, that work is important. So thanks for doing what you do. And thanks for being on the show and sharing with me.
Thank you for having me on the show. It was a great conversation. And I'm so passionate about the topic.
Yeah. And for people who want to keep in touch with you after this, where should they go?
I'm a big believer, build your network, change your life. If you reach out and connect with me, I will connect with you. You can find me probably social media channel on LinkedIn the most, and as well as you can reach me at my website, which is just the words valuespeaker.com, just the words valuespeaker.com. And my books are on Amazon.
Very cool. And I will put those links will be in your episode notes for this. So you'll be able to access those links right down there. And for you tuning in, think about someone in your life who struggles with this topic of succession planning. Is it a coworker? Are you on a team with that person? Or does it remind you of some other person? Or even if it's somebody from your past where you faced this in the past and you had these kind of conversations, even if it's somebody who you haven't talked to in a while, would you share this episode specifically with them? Because I know Meridith and I would love to know that our conversation today helped someone who needed to hear this. And frankly, we would love, she said, networking is important. She just said it. We'd love to be your excuse to reconnect with those people. So please reach out to them. If you want more productivity insights beyond the podcast, my email subscribers get access to everything I create. So come join the email list if you haven't already. And I love sharing Productivity Gladiator with you because together, these productivity skills are going to change your life. That's a wrap.
Productivity Gladiator.